about a project called Polar Star. And we're going to focus on its methodology, and in particular, the part of the methodology that has to do with interdisciplinary learning. So I wish we were together in the room. So that would actually be a real hands-on workshop, which would be a lot more fun. But I'm going to try and do my my best to make it as interactive for you as possible. Before I begin, I would like to also present to you my good friend and colleague, Priscilla. She's also
hello, everyone.
Working for Polar Star, and she will be my sidekick today. She's going to monitor all the questions in the chat here and in the YouTube channel, and she will address me these questions when she thinks she should. So I'm going to share my screen now. Let me open up my presentation. So, where is it? Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Just my presentation, right?
Yes, just your presentation.
Okay, so the part of the Polar Star methodology that I'm going to talk to you about is science as a whole. It's called science as a whole. This is a methodology that we have been working on for the past 8 years. So lately I find it very, very difficult to be able to say everything that I want in 2 hours while not tiring everybody and doing hands-on activities with them. The good news is that all the things that I'm going to show you can be, when you go into your class, can be wrapped up into 2 simple tools. And of course, I'm going to give you these tools, but what I want to do, and I'm going to try to do, is that I will try to explain the rationale of the methodology, so that you can understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and decide for yourself if it's worth doing in your class. And if you decide that you want to do it in your class, perhaps you might find your own inventive, creative, amazing ways to do it beside the 2 simple tools that I will present you towards the end. So science as a whole really focuses on one single, simple, very annoying question. And that question is the question every single teacher has heard more times than he or she wished in her or his career. So why do I have to learn this? This is something that our students keep asking us. So why do students ask this question? Why do students complain about having to learn too many things at school altogether? In order to understand this question, really, I'm using what we call the why tool, which is a super simple thing. Every time you ask why again. So why do students complain about having to learn what we teach them? I'm sure you can come up with a lot of answers. I'm going to give you the 4 that come to my mind first. Because they have too many things to learn, fair enough. Because they have little time to work on each subject, which is also true. Because they don't find meaning to what we ask them to learn, and because they don't want to study, which is also pretty fair, actually. So I'm going to focus on the last one. They find no meaning in what we teach them. This is often a very often case. By the way, except for Priscilla, who I already gave her permission to interact with whenever she wants, I would like you all to feel free to also interrupt me and comment when you have something to share. It doesn't necessarily have to be me doing all the talking all the time. So feel free to share your thoughts and questions with me whenever you feel. So going back to the why tool, why do students complain? One of the reasons is because they find no meaning in what we teach. So why do they not find meaning in what we teach them? And here's what we think. There is a really big gap between school and everyday life. What do students usually do in their everyday life? They do the things that they love. They go outdoors and play with their skateboards, with their bicycles. They sing, they play musical instruments, they play with their tablets and their cell phones. They do all the kinds of stuff that they like, that they love. But in school, what they usually do is listen to a teacher talking and showing them equations and diagrams. And to be fair, this is not all students do in school. They are not just bored in school, they also have fun. And they have fun with their teachers. And luckily, teachers are beginning to change the way they teach and make it more fun for the students. So students do have fun in school. They have fun using ICT tools, doing activities with digital tools. They also get to get their hands dirty and do experiments and have fun playing around in labs, which is amazing. But the problem is that usually what happens in school stays in school. So there's this gap between schools and everyday life, which we really need to bridge. What is really happening is that we teach our students a bunch of concepts. So it's like giving them standalone tools like cogs, like screws, like screwdrivers, and all. We're giving them a bunch of tools. But when they go out in everyday life, in the real world, they don't see tools. They don't see cogs and screws. What they see is ready-made things. They see bicycles, they see rockets, they see all kinds of stuff. So on one hand, we have the tools, and on the other hand, we have a bunch of ready-made items.
Leftera, sorry to interrupt you, but there's something on your screen that keeps appearing and says, please move this window away. Yes, we can see that.
Yeah, I don't know why that is appearing. Maybe now it's gone for good. I don't know. We'll see.
Now we just see a green screen and a green arrow.
Okay, let me stop the share and start it again. Okay, likely, hopefully it would not appear again. So the problem is that how do we get from the standalone tools to the things that we make with these tools? And what happens is, because of this gap, the side effect is that what we teach our students in schools, they find that meaningless and tedious and really not interesting, and they forget it much sooner than we hoped for. And when they go out in real life, they like using tablets and cars and bicycles and whatever else, but there's this black boxing effect. They never really care to look inside and see, how does this thing work? How is it made? And dive into the technology that they see around them and the phenomena that they see around them. And that often leads them to this idea of an abstract world that they don't really understand how it works. And usually when you ask them to dive into something a little bit more scientific, they avoid participation. They think it's a little bit too complicated to bother. So how do we go from standalone concepts that we teach them to like energy or photosynthesis or molecules or whatever, to what's happening out there. If you think about it, you have the tools in one hand and the ready-made item on the other. So what is really missing? What's missing is the manual. This is what is usually not discussed. It's really what's missing from science classes. It's like you have a big pile of puzzle pieces, but you don't know what they represent. Students often cannot see what the bigger picture is. And of course, the bigger picture is our world. So we want to put all these pieces together and make something meaningful out of them so we can actually give meaning to what students learn. And going back to my reflection and why do students complain about what they learn, now I'm going to ask why for the other three, and I'm going to target them all grouped up. The problem behind all these three is pretty much the same. It has two names. One is overloaded curricula, the other one is activities that don't provoke students' curiosity and interest. They have too many things to learn, and usually what we do with them in our class, not because we don't know any better, but probably because we don't have the time or the lab to do it. Usually what we do with our students is not that intriguing to them. So how do we bridge the gap and how do we tackle all these problems? Well, in Polar Star, we're bridging this gap using a bridge that has two big pillars. One is called Science as a Whole, which is what this workshop is about. And the other pillar is STEAM education. So our methodology has two big parts. Science as a Whole is focusing on what we teach our students, and STEAM education methodology focuses on how. So the part of the methodology that we're discussing together today is about the content and about the curriculum, which is mostly related to the overloaded curricula, whereas the STEAM education part focuses on teaching methodologies, so how we teach science, so science in action, and it's mostly linked to the activities and how to design interesting activities for our students, even if they have to be super quick. So this part of the methodology has to do with interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary learning and bringing all the science disciplines together to create one meaningful synthesis out of them. And when it comes to STEAM education, we go beyond science. So we transcend the science discipline as a whole, and we go transdisciplinary because we're bringing in technology, engineering, art, and mathematics into the game to create a bigger unity. So science as a whole, like I said, is the part that we're going to talk about. And the question that we asked in the beginning, which is, why do I have to learn this? Leads us teachers or us Polar Star team researchers, leads us to ask two other questions, which is, at the end of the day, what is really important to teach our students? At all this huge bulk of information that we have to communicate to them, what is really important? And the second one is, how do we make that knowledge stick? How do we increase knowledge retention? And both these questions are super closely linked again to our main problem, which is overloaded curricula. From these two questions, I'm going to start with the easy one, which is, well, actually it's not the easy one, it's the more technical one, I would say, which is why do we increase knowledge retention? And at this point, I'm going to ask you to do a little bit, a small activity with me. I would like you to go to menti.com, use this code and answer a couple of questions for me. So I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes for each of these questions. Just raise your hand when you're there, so I know. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. I will put the code in the chat so you can still have access to it. So can you see the first question in Menti, Priscilla?
I'm sorry, what did you ask?
I'm going to open the Menti now. I'm going to share my screen in the Menti. Okay.
You're not sure. Oh, you started. Yes, we can see now.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that and type your questioning. So you need to go to menti.com. We'll also write that in the chat. It gives a different, try another code, because I think something, when I updated it, it might change the code. Try the code that I added in the chat now. Does it work now, Yanis? Because I still cannot see anybody.
Yes, it works fine.
Okay, okay.
So we have a question on YouTube.
Yes.
Maybe you can answer. It's for you. It's from Elena, and it says, thank you, Eleftheria. I agree with you. Empathy for young learners and teachers. Your emotional quotient approach is the best I've heard lately. Do you believe synchronous, remote, or distance learning is enough?
Synchronous, remote learning. I think that the best way to go is to combine synchronous and asynchronous, because that way you give your students time to breathe and do things in their own time, and that also in the comfort of their home, it gives them also time and the courage maybe that they need to take initiative, to experiment a little bit more, to try things out. So when it comes to a situation like this, I think that it would be best if you used asynchronous learning as well. So giving them tasks that are offline, that are fun for them to do. So I'm going to start reading your answers as they come. Group things together, visualize. I try to repeat it as many times as possible. A lot of you say that you make notes. Well, the question is more about when you cannot really take a note, how do you remember things? Visualization techniques, associating the information with an image. So again, visualize. So we have 3 people talking about visualization, making something visible. We're creating a mind map, repeating a lot of things. Let me see if there are other. I think we're pretty much done. We can come back to it later if we have more answers. I'm going to move on to the second question now. So next slide. Now I want you to think about the most vivid childhood, your most vivid childhood memories. And I want you to think about them and tell me, what do you think it is that made those memories stick? Why do you remember those particular moments and not the day after, for example. Okay, so these are all great answers. I would sum them up in two words. I would say significance and emotion. These are the two main things that you're actually telling me through your answers. So it's either something that is highly emotional to you, or something that you feel like it's very important, it's very significant to you, and you're totally right. Please keep adding questions, adding answers. We can go back to them later as well. And now I'm going to move on to my third question. Now I want you to think about the last piece of scientific information that you read about and that you still remember, obviously. Why do you think it is that you still remember that piece of information? So let's see what you're up to. So in this case, in this question, your answers could be summed up to something that is important to you because it's close to your work, or because the piece of information that you acquired was something that was very innovative or something very exciting to read about, so it triggered your curiosity. So again, the main point is something that is either close to your work, or something really close to you and to your life, or something that made an impression for you and it was exciting to read about. So based on the answers that you gave to these three questions, and feel free to open up your mics and share your thoughts beyond Mentimeter. Think about these three questions that I asked you. One was about the tricks to help you remember certain things when you don't have your phone around, your childhood memories, and the latest scientific discoveries that you read about. Can we really use all these ideas that you shared and all these ways that you have about for remembering things to increase students' retention? So based on your answers, do you have any ideas about how to increase students' retention in the school class? Anybody would like to share using their mics?
Could I share something?
Sure. Is it Marina that I hear?
Yes, yes. I was thinking about childhood experiences that you brought up. And the reason I have vivid childhood experiences are the senses, the tastes, the smells, with people, visions of people I love, and what I was doing and feeling very nice. So I think that we could do the same about when we are teaching, and that by learning through experiences, experiential learning. So the hands-on activities, and children will have a good time, as you said, by getting dirty in the classroom while learning with hands-on activities. They would for sure remember this activity and what they had learned.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. Like the rest of the participants also say in the chat, you talked about tastes and flavors and people. So this is all things that are related to real life. So having a learning experience that is closely linked to you as a person, to your life, to your emotions, is really what makes a memory stick. So it has to be something that is meaningful to you, that has added value to your life, but it's not enough. The personal detail has to be there even more strongly through your emotions and your experiences and your memories. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, so these were the three questions that I asked, and the final one was about can we use the answers that came from that brainstorming to increase students' retention. So tricks to strengthen your memory. How can we strengthen our memory? So this is mostly related to the first question. There's actually a very, very fun trick that comes to us through the ages. It goes back thousands of years to ancient Greece and ancient Rome. It comes from Cicero. It's a method that, the method of Loki, as I also read it in some bibliography. So it's a very simple trick that ancient Greeks used to use in order to be able to memorize whatever they needed, like long speeches, because obviously they didn't have PowerPoint, or whatever else they needed to remember, and they couldn't take a picture of it or take a note down on their cell phone. So there's this tool, that there's this trick, this method that Cicero used, and it has 4 steps. One is called the memory palace. The second step is about action. The third step is about emotion, and the fourth step is about review. So before moving on, let me introduce to you one of our Polar Star mascots. Please say hello to Polar. He is going to, or she actually, I don't think we ever decided if he's a male or a female. Judging by the eyelashes, I think she's probably female. But Polar is going to help me out a little bit to explain to you how this whole strategy works. So the memory palace is basically an imaginary place that you are very familiar with and has different sections. So in the case of my demonstration, I'm using Polar, and Polar's body parts is my memory palace. So her head, her eyes, her cape, her buckle, and her feet, or whatever other place on her body is her body is my memory palace. So imagine that these different parts of her body are placeholders in which I'm going to store memories. So I'm going to try to memorize something super simple right now. I'm going to try to memorize a shopping list of 10 items. So the trick here is that I use the memory palace and I place the things that I want to remember, so the things in my shopping list, into my memory palace, so in the different body parts of Polar here. But I have to do it in a very particular way. I have to add action and emotion to that. So I have to do it so that I come up with a super bizarre appearance where I place everything in a way that is somehow funny for me. That's the emotion I'm using here. So I am going to imagine that I have Polar is going to go do my shopping, and she has a canister of milk on her belt. Her belt buckle is a cookie. Her hair is made of pasta. She's wearing garbage bag pants. She has eggs on her eyes. This is a Greek reference, actually, because when we fry eggs, we call them egg eyes. Her cape is made out of a sponge. The sleeves of her t-shirt are out of toilet paper. She's wearing ketchup lipstick, a bleached t-shirt, and she has shampoo bubbles on my sponge. So if I was doing that on myself instead of Polar, I would probably imagine myself going to the supermarket looking something like this. And this is the trick. You use your memory palettes, so your body parts, and you attach the things, the memories you want, the things you want to remember. You place them in the different placeholders in your memory palace, and you do it in a way that is meaningful to you, using action and emotion. So every time I go to the supermarket, essentially this is what I do. I do this kind of activity, and then I go over myself. I'm looking at the stuff that I have on me, and then when I go to the supermarket, I start buying the stuff that I imagine that I have on me. So this is a very simple example of how this technique is used. You can have very different ways of doing it. For example, instead of your body, you can use your home. So every room in your home is a placeholder where you store a memory. So when you have 4 parts in a speech, for example, you assign one part to each room, and you make a story out of it. So as you enter your room, you're actually going through a story, and that story will help you remember your speech. And this is exactly the basis of all the methods that people who can remember insanely large pieces of information do it. So if you come across people that can memorize 36 decks of playing cards, for example, this is how they do. This is the basic strategy that they use. So we have a trick to help us out, which is this trick coming to us from Cicero. And moving on to the second question that we had was the childhood memories, and what is it that made these memories so strong? The basic answer here is emotion. It's an important factor when it comes to storing memories. It's one of the tools that our brain uses to move things from the working memory to our long-term memory. And in the learning process, you can add emotions in different ways. You can relate what you're teaching to your students' personal experiences, so the things that happen at home, their life, whatever is happening at home. You can do it by building new memories with them through the hands-on activities that you do with them, and make sure that you add a lot of happy emotions into that equation. Or if you don't have the luxury of doing activities, maybe you could think of small in-class activities that you can do, like trying to make a surreal story using a concept that you're teaching, or a yes-and story. A yes-and story is a story that is, it's a fictional story. So I start by saying something random, like, remember when we went to the park? And then the other person has to say yes and add something again, but it doesn't have to be real. It can be something imaginary. So yes, and it was raining. So this is a game where you build up an imaginary story using the yes and phrase as a link. And going to the third question about new scientific knowledge, also again in reference to the responses that you gave, scientific knowledge tends to stick around in our brains when it's important to our everyday life, when it has to do with products and services of our everyday life that are useful to us. If it's something impressive, so an impressive achievement or an impressive discovery. So this is the part of, if you think about it, it's the part where you see a concept in action. We make use of a concept to produce something meaningful or to serve a need. So this is closer. It's like we're looking at a concept in action. Oh, so try to keep that in mind. So how can we use what we talked about so far to increase knowledge retention and move things from the working memory to the long memory? There are 4 keywords that we're going to focus on. Selecting information based on what is important. We remember the things that are important to us by connecting them to something meaningful or relating something to someone's emotional experience, which these 2 are also related to deep learning processes. Revisit and review. So going back to my original Cicero trick, we have the memory palace, we have the action, we have the emotion, we have the review, and we have 4 keywords. So how do we use this trick in a meaningful way in our class to give some meaning to what students learn? Well, we can turn the memory palace into a knowledge palace. So we, just like I used Polar's body or my house as my memory palace, here, when we go into the class, we need to find a memory palace, a memory palace that is related to knowledge. So a knowledge palace, some kind of structure that has these kind of placeholders like the rooms in a house in which we can store concepts and memories. When it comes to action, in the science class, that translates to concepts in action. So looking at concepts through different phenomena, through connections with other concepts, through everyday life. Emotion comes into play with by linking what we're teaching our students with their personal memories and their personal experiences. And review comes into play with revision, of course, revisiting concepts. So the 4 keywords that I mentioned earlier are conveniently enough linked to one of these steps of this memory trick. So the memory palace, which we now will call a knowledge palace, is connected to importance. So we're not picking a palace based on something that we necessarily feel comfortable about, like our body or our house. But when it comes to knowledge, we're going to design the memory palace based on importance. So how important something that we're teaching is, We're going to try and give meaning to what students learn, give a context to the concepts that we teach through action based on phenomena, real life phenomena and everyday life. We're going to tackle experience using emotion and students' memories. And of course, we're going to revisit everything we learned, but we want to do that in an inventive way that will help increase our students' retention. Are there any questions so far because we're concluding the part of how do we increase knowledge retention? And we're going to move on and discuss about the other question that we had. So are there any questions so far? Do you have anything for me, Priscilla?
No, nothing.
Okay. So to sum this up before I continue, we had two questions at the beginning. One was, what is really important to teach? Second was, how do we make knowledge stick? How do we increase knowledge retention? And we discussed that there are four basic elements that we want to deploy in order to increase knowledge retention. And that is by making sure that the importance of the things that we learn, something we may need to make sure that what we teach our students is important to them. It has to be meaningful for them. It has to be connected with their experience. And we have to keep revisiting the same concepts in order to increase knowledge retention. These are the four keywords, the four things that we want to do in order to increase knowledge retention. And we're using a memory trick that comes to us from ancient Greece, which has 4 steps: creating a memory palace and storing memories using action and emotion and reviewing everything. So we're using this trick to accommodate the 4 things that we need in order to increase knowledge retention. So we're going to put this aside for a little bit and think about the second question now, which is what is really important, and then we're going to put all these things together. So what is really important when it comes to the stuff that we teach our students? What is really important to teach them? And this question, again, also stems from overloaded curricula. So what is really important? Sadly enough, I think most of you will agree with me that over 90% of the knowledge that students acquire during their school life fades away shortly after. In the next 4 or 5 years, they have probably forgotten most of the facts of the things that they learned. And the 10% that usually sticks around is quite incohesive. There are random pieces of information that students might remember for the most unexpected reasons, and not necessarily because these are the 10 most important things that they learned out of 100. So it's usually scattered knowledge that is not really meaningful or useful to them anyway. So if we could change that around, what should that 10% actually be? If we as science teachers could decide what are the main things that we need to teach our students, what are the basic things that everybody should know about when it comes to science. Any given random person that you meet in the street out there, provided that they have finished school, what are the very basic things that they need to know about science? So to think about that a little bit, we're going to go to Mentimeter again. Ignore the code that you see here. It's a code that we used before. And I want to ask you 3 things again. So I'm going to move on to Mentimeter again. So do all the concepts that you teach, do you think that all the concepts that you teach have the same gravity? Are they all equally important? This is my first question. Okay, I think it's pretty unanimous. So not everything with teacher students is equally important. So given that they're not equally important, how do you prioritize between the core concepts that you teach them and the ones you consider secondary? This is my second question to you. Again, if anybody wants to share by speaking and not using Menti, feel free to do so. Okay, so you have a couple of strategies that you've shared with him, that you have shared. You talk about highlighting the importance of the core concepts. I assume you mean mostly orally, and as you also say, by repeating several times. By giving more time to these core concepts, also very, very important. According to students' abilities and interests, I'm not sure what our participant meant here, because, well, the core concepts are core concepts regardless the abilities of the students and their interests. Well, they are core concepts whether we like it or not. But I would assume you mean that you tackle them differently, focusing more on students' interest based, maybe, or their needs. I'm going to ask you another thing now. When it comes, so you told me that you don't think everything is equally important. Yes. You prioritize between core concepts and secondary concepts by allowing more time to core concepts or revisiting them more often, and other strategies. But what about the content itself now? So the actual things that you teach them. When it comes to science education, which do you think are the actual core concepts that constitutes the foundations of how the world works? What are the really, really important things that you think students should always remember after they leave school? And I would like to encourage you to not just think about your own discipline if you're a science teacher, think about all science disciplines and focus on the content, on the curriculum, not on ideas about science in general, like the ethics behind science or the value of mathematics and all that. Just think about science curriculum right now. Which do you think are the core concepts that students should definitely remember for the rest of their lives? Well, these are physics, mathematics, history, and biology. These are not really core concepts. These are disciplines. We're talking about the actual things that you teach them, the really, really small individual concepts. I can see evolution, I can see osmosis, I can see Earth, the Big Bang, interactions. I assume we're talking about fundamental forces there. Systems, forces. Any other ideas? Well, mathematics is a completely different discipline. That's why we say STEM or STEAM. Science and mathematics are considered separate disciplines. We have someone here saying about the quantum, which I love because the quantum world is really literally missing from most science curricula. Geography, interactions. This is a great bunch. So let us wonder a little bit more about core concepts. Can you see my presentation again?
Yes.
Okay. So when we're talking about core concepts, as you can also see from your answers, and I also urged you to do, concepts like energy or like forces or like earth, these are concepts that are not part of a single discipline. They appear in multiple disciplines, so they are overarching. And if you put all these core concepts together, they essentially describe our world in a nutshell. There are 5 or 8 or 10 things that really describe our world in a nutshell. And they are key. This is also why we call them core. They are key to understand any other secondary concept. They are key to understanding phenomena. And because they're so fundamental, they can actually be used in class as a reference system to support meaningful learning. So every time you teach something to your students, you always make a link to a core concept so they can relate everything they learn to something that is bigger and wider and more abstract. So we have been working on such a set of core ideas. We've been doing that since the GOLA project, when I told you that we started working on our methodology 8 years ago. This is exactly how we started. The whole methodology was born because we wanted to try to find a set of core concepts of science, which we could use as a reference system that goes beyond the traditional disciplinary curricula and has a more interdisciplinary approach. And we came up with such a set of idea of concepts. We call it the big ideas of science. In our set, I'm not going to spend time telling you how we got to that because it's a huge story and you can find that fairy tale on our website. But I'm going to tell you that we have 8 big ideas. If you take a closer look, you will realize that it really has to do with the scales of the universe. And each big idea has a core sentence, which is the sentence you're looking at right now, and then a secondary piece of text to accompany text that completes the big idea. So our first idea is about energy and how it can never be destroyed or created. The second is about the fact that we only have that we only have 4 fundamental forces. One idea is about Earth and its place in the universe. Another is about what constitutes matter and the elementary particles. What is going on in the microcosm, so in very small scales. One is about evolution, another one is about cells, and the last one is about Earth itself and what's happening in Earth, on Earth, I'm sorry. So let me sum up again, because as we move along, more and more information pile up and it's easy to get lost. We talked about increasing knowledge retention. We talk about a technique to strengthen our memory, which has 4 steps. Deciding, imagining a memory palace and storing memories to the memory palace through action and emotion, and then reviewing your palace and what you have put in it. We also talked about the elements that are important when it comes to storing memories into our long-term memory. So the elements that are important to increase knowledge retention. And we talked about the importance of the memory, the meaning of the memory, the experience behind it, and how often we revisit it. And when it comes to what is really important, what we said or what we talked about is that not every piece of information is the same. Not all concepts are equally important. Some of them are more fundamental than others. So when it comes to what is really important, there is actually a set of core science concepts that we could consider as the most important pieces of information that we want our students to have. So these two questions that we have been talking about, we have three tools in our methodology to help you guys address them in your school and with your students. The first tool or method is by making sure that you always keep the bigger picture in mind. The second is by encouraging you to present each concept within different contexts. So presenting each concept through different phenomena, through connections with different other concepts. And with, I will talk about that a little bit later. And the third method is by making your teaching as personalized as possible, offering personalization opportunities to your students. So personalized learning. And we're using these, we're killing two birds with one stone here because we're using all these three methods to address both these questions at the same time. So we're really, this is really the part when everything comes together and we're putting this into one seamless approach that answers both these questions. So when we're talking about keeping the bigger picture in mind, what we're really referring to here is the set of big ideas of science that I talked to you about. And when we talk about presenting each concept within different contexts, we're talking about connections between concepts, especially concepts that come from different disciplines and their connection to interpreting phenomena. And when it comes to personalized learning, we're talking about students' memories, their stories, the stories that they want to tell, and their experiences. And we are building a tool, which is called the Science Wand, which encompasses all these three. It's a digital tool, which is under construction as we speak, but we also have an analog version for that, so a hands-on version that so you can do the same thing without the wand in your class. So these three things that these three solutions that these three methods. If you think about the Cicero's trick and the four elements that I talked about that are important to increasing knowledge retention, the big ideas of science are connected to importance. These are the most important things that we want our students to learn. These are the core fundamental concepts of our world. So it's related to importance, and we're going to use these 8 big ideas as our memory palace. These are the 8 place quarters that we're going to use in the in the knowledge palace that we're going to design and store concepts in each big idea. The connections to other concepts and to interpreting phenomena is related to the meaning. So we are giving meaning to a concept by presenting that concept through the phenomena that is related to and is involved in, and through connections with other concepts. So this is like watching the concept in action, which is the second step of the trick. And when it comes to students' memories, of course, this is related to experience. So the experience that each student has with that concept through memories and experiences from their everyday life. And that is connected to the third step of Cicero's method, which is about emotion. So we add emotion to the equation through experience, through students' experiences, past experiences, or experiences they will form in class through fun activities in class, short-term or in larger projects. And the tools we're going to give you, or the digital tool that the science wants, is related to revisiting and reviewing. So essentially is a way for you to be able to help your students easily revisit all they've learned, not just as a standalone concept, so not just revisiting what does Newton's second law mean, but by also revisiting the emotions that are behind the action, so the concept in action, and also revisiting the place that this concept has within the bigger picture, so the connection to the big ideas. So this is the part that I talked about earlier, not just repeating and revisiting and doing a review like we usually do in class, but in a little bit more elaborate way. So we are offering a tool to help students revise and revisit all they've learned, but not just the standalone concept, so not just a phrase, but the entire experience of learning it as well. So when I'm going to briefly explain to you each of these three elements now. So when it comes to the bigger picture, the problem that we have in our schools most of the time is that each of the science students, me included, we keep into our own bubble. We like the things that we teach, we are happy with that, we're comfortable with that, and we don't really want to know anything about what everybody else is doing. So we keep what we teach into little boxes. We have the physics box, the chemistry box, and so on. However, the concepts that we teach them do not really belong in boxes, if you think about it. Whatever we teach our students is not necessarily only found in stuff you would talk about in physics or in chemistry. Concepts are just concepts. They're there to describe something bigger. These boxes are something that we made of. In fact, regardless where each concept is taught, it's not necessarily single colored. It's not necessarily related to a single discipline. All science concepts are multicolored. You can meet them in any discipline. In fact, there are no 4 boxes. If you think about it, the box is only one. And the box is our cosmos, it's our world. Every single concept that they learn in science is about explaining how the world works. And the world doesn't really know about doesn't care about chemistry or biology, or however we have decided to organize science disciplines. So the bigger picture is really about taking all these concepts, all these little pieces of a puzzle, and putting them together in a meaningful interdisciplinary picture. And why do we want to do that? What do we not see when concepts are kept in their own bubble? Well, obviously you miss the part of the bigger picture. You don't really see the bigger picture. You miss the connections that each concept could have to other connections that are probably done in other science disciplines. And you don't really see the actual role they play in the world. Think about it like that. Each science concept is a piece of a tangram, so what we call a tan. And you can make all kinds of shapes out of tans, and you can make, for example, nice, really, really nice squares. In this case, our science disciplines represent these squares, and you can have, shapes that make sense, that they are similar, they are simple colored, so everything in there has the same color, and they make sense. But you really miss out the point. If you take tans from all these different squares and you rearrange them, you put them all together in a different way, you can see something much more interesting. You can see a picture that tells you a lot more, and it's a multicolored picture. So this is the idea of science as a whole. We're not looking at science necessarily through the science disciplines, but we're also trying to look at science as a whole. And this is a good point to highlight, actually, that what we're talking about here is not about getting rid of the science disciplines. We're not trying to change the way we teach so fundamentally. We know and we understand why the science disciplines need to be there. The problem is, well, in some countries, actually, they have already skipped that anyway. The thing is that for those who are used to separating science into disciplines, we're so used to focusing on single sciences that we're missing the whole point. We're missing the science as a whole part. We're missing the part where each of these disciplines is there to describe the same thing, which is our world. So what we're trying to do with science as a whole is to, regardless whether your educational system is one that focuses on science disciplines separately or not, what we really want to do is to make sure that our students understand the bigger picture behind all science disciplines. And we're basically doing that through the big ideas of science. So on one hand, we have the science curricula, which is all the different small things that we teach our students. And on the other hand, we have the big ideas of science, which are 8 super big and abstract ideas, which are the core concepts that we want our students to remember. So how do we bridge these two? How do we make the connection? During the Platon project, which many of you, I believe, already know, we designed what we call a 3-dimensional map of interdisciplinary science concepts. I have the link here. Maybe I can put it in the chat as well for you to play around with. Give me a second to do it. So this is the link. I'm going to show it to you super briefly. So this is our science map. So we have here the 8 big ideas of science. For each of the big ideas, we have the description of the big idea and an additional version for younger students. We have a version for middle school and one for primary school. And if you click on each of these big ideas, you will see that it's broken into a few more. So this is what we call the intermediate ideas. And again, we have an explanation for each of them. And then they break down into small ideas. And for each of these small or basic ideas, as we call them now in Polar Star, they were called small ideas during Platon. If you click here, you can see again the description of the basic idea and its connection to not just the parent idea, but also other big ideas. So essentially, what the basic ideas that we have, the total of the basic ideas that we have, which are 86 to their total, is essentially a super curriculum. It's a curriculum that basically covers all the curricula of different countries. So you can use this structure, this map, and whatever you're teaching to your students, you can place it into your knowledge palace. You can place it under the correct bigger idea so that you can help your students get the bigger picture. So you give context, a bigger context to everything that they learn. And this is what this map is designed to do. Any questions so far, Pri?
No, our participants just want to say that this is very interesting and they would like to have this presentation, if you could share.
I hope no questions means they are hooked in and they just wait for me to say more, and not that they have completely lost track of what I'm saying. So this is our map of ideas, which is the baby of Platon. This is what we did in Platon. And this is the part where we use this standard common backbone structure, which is for all science disciplines, and we use it to increase knowledge retention for the core ideas in particular. So that 10% that we want our students to remember, the 10% that we want to stick around, these are the core concepts. So we use this map so that we can increase the knowledge retention as far as those fundamental ideas are taught. And we do it by revisiting the same 8 ideas every time we teach something. Every time we teach a small basic concept to our students, we always attach it to one of the big ideas, which is our knowledge palace. And by going back to the same big ideas over and over through the teaching of different concepts, we hope to increase the knowledge retention as far as these ideas are concerned, and in the end, make sure that the 10% that is actually left to the students is something that is meaningful. So now going to, actually, I also forgot what, I don't know how many of you know João from Portugal, who worked for the Ministry of Education. When I presented to him this whole structure, he said, well, what you designed here is a curriculum-proof curriculum. And he's absolutely right, because it's essentially, it's a curriculum with a structure, but you can always use that regardless of the changes that might come around in your country, in the curriculum of your country. So you can use that regardless the age of your students. You can use that, so you can use that whenever and however you want. So it's a curriculum-proof curriculum, if you really think about it. So we're using the big ideas of science as our knowledge memory palace. This is our knowledge palace. And we link each concept to one of the big ideas. And by keep going back to the same big ideas, we increase the knowledge retention of those concepts by revisiting them, which is the 4th important element of our list. And now going next to the second method that I presented to you, which is the connection between each concept to other concepts and to phenomena. Think about concepts as actors, movie actors. When you see an actor starring only in comedy movies, then you can't really tell much about that actor. You only know that he or she is probably good in comedies, but you don't really think much of him or her because you only see them do the same thing again and again. But if you see the same actor starring in many different kinds of movies, so you see them in a drama, and then you see them in a sci-fi movie, and then in a drama, and then in an adventure movie, and you see how that actor performs on all these different types of movies, only then are you able to appreciate the talents of that actor and really be able to tell how good he or she is at his or her job. So it's the same thing with concepts. Concepts are not standalone entities. They're just not hovering over there in space-time on their own. They are tools that play a role in multiple phenomena, and they are connected. Concepts are a network. They're all connected to each other. So there are connections between the concepts, and these connections should be highlighted. If we do not do that, if we do not connect the concepts to the phenomena, then students really miss the opportunity to understand the power of that concept and the importance of that concept. And when we don't do this, we don't make these links, they don't really understand the true role of that concept in the natural world. They don't really they don't really get the meaning. What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of the concept has no meaning to them. So we give meaning to the concept by connecting them to the real world. We give them even more meaning by seeing them in action through the different phenomena and concepts. And most importantly, when it comes to assessing how important each thing that I learn is, if you think about it, what we're doing here is we're actually giving our students a meaningful way to assess for themselves how important what they learn is through their own experience and through all the things that they've learned, because they're not just learning the definition of a concept, they're also learning a bunch of other stuff. So we're really trying to make connections. And earlier I talked about connecting each idea, each concept to a big idea. So that was really, if you think about it, these were all one-way streets. These were a single-way pathways. We always went from a basic idea to intermediate idea to a big idea. So there were, we had this kind of pathways. What we're doing here is we're actually creating shortcuts. So we go straight to connect one basic idea to another without going through a big idea. So these are kind of shortcuts that we are creating. And we want to do them to increase again the knowledge retention by revisiting the concepts that we teach within multiple contexts. So an example would be that I am talking about when we're talking about the sun, for example, in elementary school, we might talk to them about how it's what is its place in the world, and that Earth goes around and that the moon goes around the Earth. So we're talking about the sun as a celestial object. At some point later on, we might talk about heat and thermodynamics, and we might talk about thermometers and how iron gets warm really fast, but wood doesn't. If you make a connection there and you revisit and you talk about the sun again and how the sun is the source of energy and of heat for Earth, then you're revisiting that concept and you're talking not just about the motion and the place of the sun in the universe related to the Earth, but also what does the sun mean to us in terms of as a source of life. So we're trying to make all these connections so we're able to see the same concept within different contexts. And moving to the third method, which is personalized learning. Here we have three important elements. One is that we want to link the concepts that we teach our students to their past experiences and memories, because this is how we add the emotion to it. But we also want to help them build new memories related to that concept. And that we do in class. If our classes are interesting and if they have emotion, then we build new memories with them. So fun activities with our students, short-term or long-term, bring again the element of emotion and the element of building new memories. And this now is directly related to the concept that we are teaching. And it's not just that. When in the future our students come across new phenomena, then they will be able to deploy. So we're not using the concepts only to explain to our students phenomena that they already know about. We also give them a chance to be able to deploy these concepts to correctly explain new phenomena they come across. And one very, very important element that was discussed recently in our team is also about the idea of misconceptions, especially when it comes to young students. They often have misinterpretations based on their experiences. For example, the sun rises and sets, but it's not really the sun that is moving, as we know, it's the earth. So certain misconceptions the students have come from the wrong interpretation of their own experiences. So when you discuss the experience of the student connected to the concept that you teach, you're most likely to, you increase the chances of spotting misconceptions that the students may have and be able to clarify them and tackle them. So in this case, we are building, again, on knowledge retention through experience. And we give emphasis in linking each concept taught to other concepts and to natural phenomena. But it's not just that, because this is not just what everyday life is about. It's also about technology and engineering and achievements that come from technology and engineering, either contemporary or older. These are also related to everyday life. Science concepts and science ideas are deployed by engineers, and they're used in engineering to solve problems. And we make use of these concepts and phenomena also to produce technological achievements. So we want to link each concept to other concepts, natural phenomena, but also to technology and engineering achievements. And that will help our students understand the true role of each concept, not just when it comes to phenomena in the natural world, but also when it comes to addressing the needs of societies, not just contemporary societies, but also throughout the years. I assume that most of you already thought about COVID and the period that we're going through, hard as it is also one of the best ways to demonstrate truly the immense role that science plays in our lives today. And we really want to have that element in our teaching. So when we give meaning to each small little concept that we teach our students, we increase their appreciation, not just of that particular concept, but if you think about it, when you keep doing that and you give meaning to what they learn with every single piece of new information, eventually what you're also doing, you're increasing their appreciation of science as a whole. So if we keep doing that, maybe in the next pandemic, the amount of people that believe that it's a hoax might probably be less. And the people who believe more scientists than the people on Facebook might be more. So it's not just about increasing knowledge retention and giving meaning to what people, to what we teach our students. It's also about deploying these methods to increase their overall appreciation in science and help them trust science more. And again, this COVID situation is a very descriptive example of what happens when people don't believe in science. So to get to the third part that we haven't discussed yet, the technology and engineering part, this is also, again, like seeing science in action. You have a science concept, which is related to technological achievements and engineering problems. So for example, if you're teaching your students angular momentum and the conservation of angular momentum, even for me as a physicist, if I have to teach it, I will probably get bored doing that. But if I do that by start talking to my students about the gyroscope, or if I do it by playing around with Steadicams or accelerometers or gyro compasses, then it would definitely be much more fun. And then I would actually understand myself that you know, it's not that boring. There's a fun element to it, and it's fun in knowing, you know, how stuff works. And if I take it a step further and I talk to my students about where we use these tools and the added value in our lives, so GPS, tracking motions, navigation, and all that stuff, then they definitely get to appreciate the concept of angular momentum much more than they would have had if I just told them, you know, guys, this is the conservation of angular momentum, and here's a bunch of exercises for you to do. So in this case, we increase knowledge retention through tangible results and real life challenges. And this is obviously flirting a lot with STEAM because, well, you have the science, you have the technology, you have the engineering, and you already halfway to STEAM. And if we also think about the, you know, the math is everywhere, and there's no way you can teach a science concept without math in a class, then you get STEAM, get STEM already. So we're used to teach science concepts in an isolated manner. We were used to teaching science concepts that way and focusing just on getting the students to remember the description of the concept and be able to solve a bunch of questions. What we're saying is that instead of that, we need to design, we need to have a hive, an inspiration hive, a knowledge hive, something that is inspiring to the students. So to do that, we add a bunch of elements and a bunch of extensions to what we're teaching. We link it to STEM through technological achievements and engineering problems. We link it to the bigger picture, so give a bigger, more concrete, meaningful context to anything that we teach. We connect what we teach to other things that students learn through other science disciplines, and we connect it to everyday life. And we do all that because that's how we feel that students will find meaning to what they learn, because we believe that this will increase their knowledge in retention, and because we think that this will help them stick to the core concepts. And in Polar Star, like I said, we do that using 3 tools: the bigger picture in mind, different contexts of concepts, and personalized learning. So this is the overall methodology. Like I said in the beginning, remember, it might be too big and too detailed because this is the product of a lot of work, but bear with me. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to very simple tools. So this is the overall methodology, the rationale of our methodology of how we should be teaching our students, especially when it comes to everyday teaching. If there are any thoughts up to now or any questions, perhaps it's the time to do that. So again, you're either completely lost or super hooked in to what I'm saying. I hope it's a second. Priscilla, do you have any comments from the YouTube channel maybe?
No, I was also checking.
Okay. So how can we take all of that into the school classroom? How can we do that in class? Well, you have 2 ways to do it. You can do it during your everyday teaching by doing crossovers and by linking what you're teaching to other science disciplines. And you can do it with longer term projects, which of course should be interdisciplinary and are best organized if you're working as a team with your colleagues. So think about, when it comes to everyday teaching, do a small reflection activity about how do you teach science in your school so far, if it's interdisciplinary enough according to your understanding. And think about your own teaching. Do you make connections to other science disciplines during your lessons? Do you build bridges to other science disciplines? And when it comes to projects, do the teachers, the science teachers of your school collaborate? Do you guys do stuff collaboratively? Do you design interdisciplinary projects for your students to work on? So for everyday teaching, I have a simple activity for you to do and think about. Not now, but I'm sure you are already tired to do that. But this is what we propose for you to do at the beginning of a year to make your everyday teaching more interdisciplinary. So pick a grade. You don't have to do that for every single grade that you teach at the same time. Just pick your favorite grade, the grade that you are most comfortable with, and make an overall overview of the curriculum you plan to teach. And then go over each concept that you're teaching and connect it to the part big idea that it belongs to. So next time you teach that contest, one of the things you can do is at the end of the class, you can make a reference to the big ideas of science and refer to the big ideas of science related to each of the concepts you're teaching. Another thing you can do is that you can think about the links of every single piece in the curriculum you have to teach to other concepts, to technological achievements in everyday life. So the stuff that we talked to. So for each of the concepts that you teach, try to make the connections that we talked about. Try to find connections between that concept and other concepts. Try to link it to engineering problems and technological achievements. Try to link it to everyday life and everyday phenomena. And if you do that, then you need to think and decide when and how it is best to integrate these links in your everyday teaching. So for example, a link to a personal experience might be a good way to anchor what you're about to teach to something that the students are already familiar with. So you can make the introduction of the concept through a personal experience that the students can relate to. Or if it's a totally impressive technological achievement or an impressive engineering problem, you might want to use that halfway through your teaching to do a little demo with your students. Or maybe you can use some kind of equipment at the end to reflect or give some additional information to your teacher. So whatever link you're doing, you need to think about when you're going to use it during your everyday teaching and how you can best take advantage of that link, when it's the best time to introduce it. So when is about when during the process. So are you going to use that link during the introduction, when you're trying to make connections to previous knowledge, when you're doing an experiment, when you're reflecting, when you're wrapping up the teaching of that subject. So when and how is related to the way that you're going to do it. Maybe you could do a small experiment. Maybe you could do a small demo. Maybe it could be some kind of small tour to a science museum. Maybe it could be a video. It could be a collage. It could be a hands-on art-related activity. So there are many different ways of integrating these things. It's not just about orally communicating them orally to your students or discussing them with them. It's also about, you can do it in different ways. So think about the ways you want to bring these links into your school, into your class. And obviously that doesn't necessarily mean that every single link and every single connection that you spot, you're going to bring it in class. Again, you're going to make a selection and give it a first try, do it for a couple of concepts, see how it works, and you take it from then and you build. You don't have to do everything at once and put every single link in at once. So take your time with it and try to make the connections and the process as tangible and personal as possible for your students. Try to keep the personal element into the process all the way. So that means emotion, experiences, building new memories with your students, doing activities that will stick with them. So these are the basic things that you can do for everyday teaching. For the longer term projects, we also have a participatory workshop that we have designed for you. And you can basically, well, first you have to learn what your college you're teaching. You need to know what everybody else is doing in your class. And then you need to find common ground between what you guys are teaching and see if the common ground can be used somehow. How can you take advantage of overlapping concepts to make big interdisciplinary projects out of it, or maybe just make references to each other's lessons and build bridges during everyday teaching. So, like I said, we have, I'm going to show you where to find it. We have a workshop, a complete detailed guide of how to do a workshop with your colleagues in your school to organize your lessons, to coordinate and synchronize your lessons, really. And we also have been working on the Science Wand, which is a tool that is going to allow you to do all these questions that we said. So when you see the tool, you will be able to find connections to technological achievements or to engineering problems or to other concepts ready there for you. You will not have to think about or search about everything on your own. The Science Wand is there to give you this kind of information and will allow you to add more. What we have right now, and it's basically a lot of fun to use, especially with younger children, is the analog version of the Science Wand. So essentially, this is also what the Science Wand is going to do digitally, but this is the bottom line. These are the two tools that I talked about at the beginning of my presentation, that this whole massive methodology, quite brilliantly, actually, if I may say so, comes down to using two super simple tools, which to me, at least, it's amazing. So here are the two tools that we want you to use, and the two things that we want you to do with your students in your class in order to achieve all that we have been talking about. The first one is we want you to invite your students at the end of each chapter to fill in a knowledge hive. What is a knowledge hive? It's there for inspiration. And it's a hive that has a bunch of questions. So every time they learn something new, you ask your students to fill in this hive, or maybe you can change it around if you want. You can ask them about what is the bigger picture behind what they've learned. If they remember the phenomena, some phenomena if they know of any phenomena that are connected to that concept. If they remember any other concepts that could be related to them. So all the things that I have been talking about all this time, they are basically questions in this hive. So by asking them to fill in this hive, they're reflecting on the concepts based on all the things that we have been taking on. So this is bringing in the emotion, this is bringing in the action, this is bringing in the experience. And you can do this memory hive, you can ask them to do it in class or as homework, and then you can discuss it with them afterwards to share the experiences, to share what they've put in. And obviously, while you've been doing your lessons, you have also been giving them some information. So you will probably have talked to them already about technological achievements or engineering problems, or you might have shared a personal experience with them. So it's not just about them reflecting and thinking on their own about the things that they have to put in the hive. It's also related to the things that you have been talking to them in class. So this is the first thing that we ask you to do with them. The second thing is to design their own knowledge maps. So what we are doing here essentially is every time you end the chapter again, you leave a little hexagon to your student. The hexagon is going to have the hexagon tile is going to have the color of a parent idea. So you have, actually, I don't know if I'm going to do this now. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I have it here, so I want you to see it. So this is the analog version of the science one. So what we have here is hexagon tiles, and we have 8 different colors. So I have blue, oops, I have gray, I have red, I have purple, all kinds. I've got 8 different colors of tiles. And the idea is that every time you teach your students something, you print out a bunch of those, you give one to each, you ask them to cut it themselves probably because it's going to be too much for you. So you give them a tile, and the tile has the color of the big idea that the concept belongs to. And they write the name of the big idea, of the concept that they learn on the tile, or maybe you can have it printed for them. So for example, here I have a deck of the 86 basic ideas that we have according to their colors. I don't know if you can see it very well. So every time they learn something new, you give them one of these little tiles, and you ask them to place them on a board or on a wall or on a foam board, wherever you want. And you keep doing that every time they learn something new. And the idea here is they have to place the tiles together so that the concepts that are connected are placed together. So eventually what is going to happen as they add elements to their map is that you're going to see this multicolored, beautiful map, which depicts in a very nice way the interdisciplinary nature of science and how all these things are blended together. And by making the connections, they can actually tell different stories. They can give you different stories. A game that I played with myself when we were developing this, we have the 86 basic ideas of science. I'm going to stop again to show you our deck. So the 86 basic ideas of science that we developed during the Platon project, we have them in a deck like this. So for each basic idea, this is the title of the basic idea. This is the big idea that it belongs to. These are the other big ideas, and the highlighted ones are the other big ideas that it is indirectly related to. Here are the science disciplines and the science disciplines in which this concept is taught. And if you turn around, you have the definition of the basic idea and the definition of the parent intermediate idea. So when I was developing this, when we were building this methodology, I actually played a little game. I took the entire deck and I started picking out cards randomly. So I made groups of 5, and I tried to make a story out of each group. So I would get, for example, I will do it right now actually. I would get elementary particles. I will get gravitational energy. I have rotation here. I've got internal structure of tectonic plates, and I've got transformation of macromolecules and production of energy in different cells. So I would pick 5 cards like that at random, and I tried for each set of 5 cards, I tried to make a story. I tried to see if they're connected. And what was amazing is that no matter how many times I did it, I could always find a story to tell. I could always find a way to connect all these 5 cards, regardless how unrelated they seemed at first. So this is what we want to help our students do with the map. By placing these little tiles, and this is why we have hexagons and not squares, because you can make more connections. By placing them together, then you start looking at connections. I'm going to show this to you right now. So by placing them together, you see a shape like that. If you have the names here, they can actually start building stories that are built based on the connections that the students learn about. So a map would look like something like that. This is an example. So you start with a concept that you learn, and you start adding tiles around it or next to it, and you start making all kinds of shapes. And each student is doing their own thing. So each student is going to have a completely different map, a completely different shape. And most probably they're going to be placing tiles in a different way. So in this case, I used this this green tile as my centerpiece, and I framed it with other concepts around it. So that means to me that this is one of my favorite, I would say, concepts, one on which I focus the most. So students are going to be making their maps, and through their maps, even subconsciously, they're going to be assessing again all the things that they learn, and they're going to start making connections, and they're going to be able to give you different stories out of these connections. And we've tried that before. Maybe Marina is here. She has been playing with that a lot, and maybe she would like to share her experience. And this is not just some fun thing that we thought of. This idea of creating these maps and asking students to make the links tangibly with hexagon tiles and getting them to tell stories is based on 2 art tools. One is so of course, when we're talking about this kind of thing, again, we're bringing in the element of personalized learning. So the 2 tools that we're using is the art of storytelling and the little art activity that artists do, which is called personal geography. So personal geography is about mapping something. It doesn't necessarily have to be a place, a geographical place. It's about mapping anything. It could be a map of yourself. It can be a map of your life. It can be a map of the milestones in your life. It can be a map of your family. It can be anything you want. This is why it's called personal. So you make this kind of map. It doesn't necessarily, again, have to look like a traditional map. It's something completely artistic. And the aim is to help you discover the value of what you're drawing. So in this case, we're using it to make a knowledge map. So personal geography is about mapping what the student learns. And through that, discover the value of what they learn through an artistic expression. So basically, it's a self-reflection activity that will help them put everything together in a meaningful way for them. So make sense of what they're learning based on their own understanding and their personal learning style. And this way, we aim to have a bigger impact on the learning experience. And then we've got, for example, this could easily be a personal map where you depict the big idea as a tree, and each basic idea is depicted by a leaf on that tree or a fruit on that tree. So you can have a lot of different ways of designing your knowledge map. It could be a bunch of islands that you lay around and then you attach things to these islands to tell the story. It could be galaxies. It could be anything that the students want. So in this case, we're doing it really, really super simple by just representing the concepts with hexagon tiles and asking them to make a pretty basic map. But sky is the limit, and they can get as artistic as possible with that. But you know, for the time being, we just stick to the very, very basic part that I taught you about, which is also connected to a board game, but I will leave that for now. And the second, of course, element here is storytelling. You know, students, children in particular, they love stories. It's making stories is something that makes them feel comfortable with. It makes them want to communicate. It's something that requires their active participation. It deploys many different skills like listening skills, verbal proficiency, imagination, creativity, cooperation. So getting them to tell science stories is the reason behind, is one of the things they want to do with their map. So they can start building all those things together. So these are basically the two tools that I taught you about. It's the knowledge hive and the knowledge map. So summing up, what we started, what we set off doing with this science as a whole methodology is we want to give meaning to what students learn, which basically translates to two other questions, is trying to increase their knowledge retention. And we do that using this 4 steps method, elements / methods technique, which is, it highlights the big ideas of science as the main knowledge structure that we want to use as a reference point. And this is connected to the element of importance. We give meaning and action to the concepts by linking them to different concepts and to other everyday phenomena. We add emotion and experience to the learning process by linking what we teach to everyday life, to students' memories and to students' experiences. And we offer a concrete way of really revisiting not just the concept itself, but the whole experience of learning the concept through the science wand, either the digital version or the analog version. So we have these 3 methods that I talked about that are all summed up in the science wand, or the 2 tools that I just, simple tools that I just showed you. So what are we trying to achieve? We want to promote the teaching of science disciplines in a more interdisciplinary way. So we want to offer a seamless framework. Why do we want to do this? Because we want to help the students increase the knowledge retention that they have. We want to make sure that they understand which are the fundamental concepts that they need to focus on and which are secondary ones. And because we want to give meaning to what students learn. How do we do this? We do it by providing the big ideas of science as a standard interdisciplinary backbone structure, or reference systems if you'd call it. We do this by making sure that we personalize learning as much as possible and by adding meaning to the connections, by adding meaningful connections between concepts. And we're also doing by connecting science directly to technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics through either our methodology or, through our methodology, not just through long-term projects, but also in everyday life. When and where can you use this methodology? You can use it in everyday teaching. You can deploy it to start building interdisciplinary projects, and the science and the STEAM education part of the Polar Star methodologies focusing exactly on that. As soon as you realize what your interdisciplinary project is going to be about, how to build it effectively. And you can, through the knowledge map, you can also use our methodology in a whole year-long plan and use it as a reflection process for your students, so they can keep going back to what they're learning in a meaningful way. With who can you do this? You can do it yourself on your own, in your own class, just by yourself. You can do it by collaborating with other STEAM teachers. And obviously, this is the best way to do it. The best way is to do it collaboratively with your students, because if you really think about it, how can we be talking about interdisciplinary learning if the teachers that teach the separate science disciplines don't start collaborating to begin with? So teacher collaboration is at the very heart of anything that you would want to do with interdisciplinary learning. And with that, I will end my presentation. I know you're super tired, and thank you very much for sticking around. And because you have been asking about the presentation, I will just hop on quickly to our website and show you where you can find everything. Can you see the website?
Yes.
Free? Okay.
Yes.
So this is our website. So you can find everything here. These are the parts where you will find our methodology, our activities. So when it comes to interdisciplinary projects, for example, we obviously have the Polar Star activities to offer, which we will start releasing from next week. The STEAM education part of the methodology focuses more on how to design your own STEAM activities. And this is where you will find more or less everything that we have been talking about. So I'm going to enter here to show you. So this is a video that wraps up our methodology super quickly. And then we have a lot of text actually here that explains all that we have been talking about. So here you will read the entire story of how we got started and where we ended up, so you can get the full idea of the methodology. We briefly discussed the two important questions that we talked about. What is really important to teach? How do we increase knowledge retention? Then, of course, we discussed the three methods that I presented to you, keeping the bigger picture in mind, present each concept with different contexts, and personalized learning. And what can you do in your school? So here we briefly explain the two tools and what you can do with them. And you can have access to everything here. This is where the Science 1 is going to be. It's coming soon, it's not here yet. In the section tools for students, you're going to find the knowledge hive, and this is the file that we have for you, which you can print to use the knowledge hive in your class. And we have an empty hive, we have a pre-filled in hive, and we also have the same questions in a more traditional presentation for you, so you can directly print that and use it in school. We're also going to be translating that into the languages of the consortium. And of course, here I explain how to use it. And in the knowledge map, we explain again how to do the concept map, what is the rationale behind the concept map. And here you can have access to the pre-designed hexagon tiles in which we have added the 86 basic ideas of science that we have, because as we said, they are basically a super curriculum that covers all curricula, but also at the end, you also have empty tiles for, we also have empty tiles for you to use if you want to create your own. So this is where you will find the two tools that I told you about to use in class. And here in the tools for teachers, I will also, if you wait a couple of days, actually until Tuesday, that's when I will be able to do it. I will also upload this presentation for you there. So what we have here is a brief description of how you can work with your students in your school. This is a sum up of the entire methodology that we have been talking about. And here are the guidelines of the workshop you can do with your students, with your teachers at school, in order to get started working in a interdisciplinary way and make sure that you guys make references to each other classes and you create your own, create projects for your schools, for your school. And these are all the elements that you need for this participatory workshop. And here you can have access to all the additional information we have for the big ideas of science. So in here you will find the mind map that I showed you, which is this one. You will also find the deck of basic ideas that I have here in my hands and that I also showed you, so you can download and print this as well. So all the materials are here. They are in our website, followed and accompanied by a video that summarizes our methodology and a more detailed description of the methodology. So all you need is here. And of course, our contact is here. So if you want to follow Polar Star and do something in your class, you're not, we don't just expect you to take all these things into your classroom and do them on your own. We're here to help you. We're going to collaborate with you, work with you on every single step of the way. We're more than happy to collaborate with you and bring Polar Star into your schools if you want. So thank you very much again. I know I got you really, really tired and maybe a lot of confused. Thanks for sticking around. And we really hope we hear from you again. Please visit our website. Feel free to click on participate and register your school if you want to work with us. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions at this point.
On YouTube, people are just saying thank you, very good. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for all your kind comments also here in the Zoom. I cannot even begin to imagine how fun it would have been if it was a really hands-on workshop and we could do things together and play the shopping list together and do hands-on stuff. Maybe someday, soon enough, we will be able to do them face-to-face as well. So thanks everyone again. I hope you have a great night, so you have a nice rest. And we hope to see you all soon again. Super thanks to Priscilla for being with me and helping me with the workshop. Perhaps before we go, we can open up our cameras and take a screenshot. Ah, it's still day there, Priscilla, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
It is. I'm 2 hours earlier than
yeah,
you.
It's true. I'm also very glad to see some of our advisors here. So this is a big mission for me. I wanted to tell you guys that while we have been working on this methodology, we have a bunch of teachers with us, great teachers with us that are working with us as advisors. I see Panayotis just opened up his camera. Yanis is over there, Marina. We have a lot of great people working with us, revising our methodology, and, giving us their help. And I would really like to take this opportunity to help them as well. I'm going to be knocking on your door soon to tell me what you think of all the great stuff that we have been working together. So I think, did you take your screenshot, Priscilla? You're muted.
Right. I said yes, I took, but maybe we can all smile at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much.